The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the old tape recorder. Detective Rachel Monroe pressed the play button again, her hands trembling. The voice that came through the speakers was calm, almost friendly. "You'll never find what's under the floorboards, unless you already have." The words froze her heart. The tape had been mailed anonymously that morning, wrapped in brown paper, with no return address, just the words, "Play me." It was 2:17 a.m. inside the evidence room of the small police department in Greenville, Ohio. Rain beat against the windows, lightning flashed, and Rachel realized this was no prank. The voice belonged to Dr. Ethan Keller, the town's respected surgeon, who was also the main suspect in his wife's disappearance. She hit pause, staring at the tape like it could bite her. The message had mentioned floorboards, but whose? And what was already found? Rachel called her partner, Detective Marcus Lee. "Marcus, you need to get down here," she whispered. "We have something that shouldn't exist." Moments later, the two detectives stood in the dark, their flashlights trembling over the tape deck. Marcus frowned. "Wait, that voice? You're saying it's Keller?" "I'm not saying it is him," Rachel replied. Marcus leaned closer to the evidence table. "Then how did he know we were about to search his house tomorrow?" Rachel looked up. Unless, she swallowed hard, unless someone on the inside told him. The sound of thunder drowned out the next moment. Then, another noise. From the hallway outside the evidence room, footsteps, slow, deliberate. Rachel motioned for Marcus to stay quiet. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. The knob turned. Someone was trying to come in. She grabbed her gun. Marcus reached for the light switch. The door opened just an inch, and then, without warning, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the yard. For a few seconds, there was only the sound of rain and Rachel's heartbeat. Then, from somewhere in the dark, the tape recorder clicked on again, by itself. "Detective Monroe," the voice whispered now, "you're closer than you think." Rachel's scream caught in her throat. The power flickered back, revealing an empty hallway outside the door. Whoever had been there was gone. But the tape was still spinning, and on it, a new line of words appeared on the recorder's old digital display. "Play tape 2." Rachel froze. There was no second tape in the envelope. The next morning, the story began long before Rachel ever heard that tape. It started 3 weeks earlier on a quiet street where Dr. Ethan Keller and his wife Laura lived the kind of perfect life people pretended not to envy. Neighbors said they were the model couple. He was the town's only surgeon. She taught art at the community college. They had a dog, a neat garden, and a spotless white fence. But behind that fence, something darker was growing. Laura had told her best friend Megan that she was afraid of her husband. "He's been different," she whispered over coffee one morning. "He watches me when I sleep." Megan thought it was stress. Everyone in town loved Ethan. How bad could he be? But 2 days later, Laura didn't show up for class. Ethan said she'd gone to visit her sister in Denver, but when police called the sister, she said she hadn't heard from Laura in months. That's when Detective Rachel Monroe took the case. At first, there wasn't much. Just a missing woman, a charming husband, and a house that smelled faintly of bleach. The first search turned up nothing. But something about the floor in the living room bothered Rachel. The boards were newly replaced, different shade, different nails. When she asked Ethan, he smiled easily. "Termite damage," he said. Rachel didn't believe him. Still, ain't without proof, she couldn't get a warrant. Then came the envelope. Someone, maybe the killer, maybe a witness, wanted the police to find something. But what? And why now? By nightfall, Rachel was back at Keller's house with a new search order. She stood in the same spotless living room, her flashlight dancing over the shiny boards. She could almost hear the voice from the tape. "You'll never find what's under the floorboards." Marcus knelt beside her with a crowbar. "You sure about this?" Rachel nodded. "Do it." The first plank came up easily, then the second, then something clinked, metal on metal. Marcus froze. "Rachel, you're going to want to see this." He reached in and pulled out a small, rust-colored box, sealed tight, heavy, and cold. Rachel's stomach flipped. They placed it on the table. Marcus pried it open. Inside were 2 items, a blood-stained locket engraved with LK and a micro SD card. Rachel's breath caught. "That's not just evidence," she whispered. "That's Secret evidence. She didn't know it yet, but the SD card would reveal something far worse than murder. She picked it up with tweezers, slid it into a digital reader, and hit Open. The screen lit up with a single video file. File name, Confession, MP4. Marcus looked at her. Do we play it? Rachel nodded slowly. We play it. The video opened on a shaky camera view of someone's basement. The lighting was dim, but Rachel recognized the brick wall pattern. It was Keller's house. Then the sound came, a man's breathing, a woman crying. The camera turned, and the face of Dr. Ethan Keller filled the screen. He smiled, cold, proud, and said, "If you're watching this, then the secret's already out." The video cut to black. Rachel's scream echoed through the quiet house. The evidence had exposed the killer, but something about the video didn't make sense. In the reflection of Keller's glasses, just before the clip ended, there was another face. Someone else was there when Laura died. The basement lights flickered once, then went black. Detective Rachel Monroe sat frozen in front of the computer screen, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The image on the monitor had vanished, replaced by static lines dancing across the glass. But what she saw just before the video ended wouldn't leave her mind. In Dr. Ethan Keller's glasses, there was another reflection, a second face, a silhouette standing just behind the camera. Rachel whispered, almost to herself, he wasn't alone. Marcus leaned closer. You sure? Maybe it was a shadow. No, Rachel said firmly. Someone else was there when Laura died. Someone filming. The hum of the rain outside grew louder. The storm was still raging. Rachel ejected the SD card and sealed it back in the evidence bag. The label she wrote was trembling and uneven. Exhibit A. Keller case. Video shows second unknown figure. Marcus sighed. If there was a second person, this just got a whole lot worse. Rachel nodded. We're not just looking for a killer anymore. We're looking for an accomplice. She looked around the dark living room, her flashlight catching bits of dust swirling in the air. Everything about the house felt wrong now, like the walls themselves were hiding secrets. She turned toward the staircase leading down to the basement. We need to go down there. Marcus frowned. Now? In the middle of a thunderstorm? Rachel's eyes didn't move from the stairs. The video was filmed down there. If he buried something else, it'll be in that room. The two detectives descended carefully, each step groaning under their boots. The air grew colder, damp, and metallic. The basement smelled like bleach, and something else, something faintly sour. Rachel swept her flashlight slowly across the floor. The beam caught something in the far corner, a large stainless steel sink, the kind used in hospitals. Above it, a single light bulb swung gently, clicking with every sway. Marcus whispered, Ed? This guy was cleaning up more than just blood. Rachel crouched near the sink and noticed a faint reddish smear under the metal basin. She took out a swab and a small vial, carefully collecting a sample. Then she noticed something else. A camera mount on a tripod, still standing, but the camera was gone. She exhaled. He took it with him. Marcus tilted his head. But why leave the SD card? Rachel stared at the mount. Maybe he wanted us to find it. Marcus frowned. That makes no sense. She turned back toward the stairs. Neither does a killer recording his own crime, unless... Lightning flashed through the small basement window. For a brief second, Rachel saw something scrawled on the wall in faded red marker. Truth hides under the light. Rachel stepped closer, brushing dust off the wall. It was real. The words stretched across the concrete like a riddle. Marcus whispered, Creepy. Maybe not, Rachel said. Maybe it's a clue. She pointed her flashlight at the single dangling bulb above the sink. What if the message means, under the light, literally? Marcus gave her a puzzled look, but helped her push the heavy sink away from the wall. As the metal screeched across the floor, something clattered underneath. A small glass jar wrapped in duct tape. Rachel's hands shook as she peeled it open. Inside was a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully. Written in shaky handwriting were the words, It wasn't him, it was me. Rachel's eyes widened. What the... Marcus took a step back. So, the accomplice confessed? Before Rachel could answer, her phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Captain Harris, their superior at the department. She answered, still staring at the note. Monroe. The captain's voice was grave. Rachel, You need to get out of that house. Right now. Rachel frowned. Sir? Ethan Keller was found dead an hour ago, Harris said. Gunshot wound. In his car by Miller's Creek. Sar. Rachel froze. Dead? But the tape was mailed this morning. I know, Harris said, which means someone else is still out there. The call ended abruptly. The silence that followed was heavier than the storm. Marcus whispered, If Keller's dead, who's been talking to us? Rachel turned slowly toward the stairs. A faint noise echoed from above, the creak of a floorboard. Someone else was in the house. She motioned to Marcus, and they both drew their guns. The next moment stretched forever. Footsteps moved again, slow, careful, right above their heads. Rachel whispered, Basement lights off. Marcus flipped out the switch, plunging them into darkness. They waited. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice, calm and chilling, came from the top of the stairs. Detective Monroe, you found the jar. Rachel's blood ran cold. It was the same voice from the tape. Marcus aimed toward the stairs. Show yourself. No answer. Just silence. Rachel's flashlight beam shook slightly as she pointed it upward, and froze. A figure stood halfway down the stairs, face hidden in shadow. He was holding something shiny in his hand. The voice came again. You're late, detective. The truth's already been rewritten. Then he dropped what he was holding, a small black flash drive, and ran back up. Rachel lunged forward, but by the time she reached the top, the front door was wide open, rain blowing in, the street outside empty. She bent down, breathing hard, and picked up the flash drive. It was labeled Play Me Too. Rachel stared at the flash drive for a long time that night. She was back at the station, the rain still hammering the windows. She inserted the drive into her computer and hesitated. Her hand hovered over the mouse. Marcus said quietly, Maybe we should get a warrant first. Rachel shook her head. Too late for that. She clicked play. The video opened with a close-up of a man's hand writing something on paper, the same shaky handwriting as the note in the jar. It wasn't him, it was me. Then the camera tilted up. The face that appeared wasn't Ethan Keller's, it was someone else's. Rachel's heart stopped. She knew that face. It was Captain Harris, and he was smiling.